Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls. My name is Brenna Victoria, and if you are new to the channel, welcome. On today's video, we are going to be talking about Dr. Richard Broomfield of Oregon. Now, the story takes place in 1921, and maybe some later years, but Dr. Richard Broomfield was a dentist who had a very shady, past, but we'll get more into that as we go along in this video. But Dr. Richard Broomfield was a successful dentist. He ran a small, very respectable and successful dental practice in Roseburg, Oregon, which is a small town. He had moved there several years before. He had just graduated from, dental school in Chicago. Prior to becoming a dentist, he was a school principal in Indiana. Because of, his education, everyone looked at Dr. Broomfield as a pillar of the community. He basically stood out. And in this community, they were more agrarian economy. So we're gonna start off as where the story takes a dark turn. So one of his patients had come in, and his patient was none other than Dennis Russell, a laborer. And instead of Dennis paying Broomfield for, to remove some teeth, Broomfield had told Dennis, "Hey, if I remove your teeth, do you just want to work it off for me?" And Dennis was like, "Okay, yeah, sure. I'll come over and, I'll do some work for you on your farm." So Dr. Broomfield had picked up Dennis the day that Dennis was going to go over to the farm and, remove some tree stumps for the dentist. But what happened was Dr. Broomfield picked up Russell and then drove out of town, where Russell ended up dying of 3 gunshots. And it was none other than Dr. Broomfield who had murdered, poor Russell. And to make matters worse, after the dentist had killed Mr. Russell, he put his body back into the car. Then he drove another few miles further west of the town to a steep hill in Melrose, Oregon, and staged a car accident in which the body of Russell and Broomfield's car were set on fire. And after that happened, Dr. Broomfield then fled to Alberta, Canada, leaving his wife behind to collect a $30,000 life insurance. Now, back then in 1921, $30,000 is the equivalent today of maybe $200,000, maybe more. I could be wrong, but that's just an estimate. Now, this sounds really weird, right? Well, no. It turns out that Dr. Broomfield had actually committed these types of crimes before, and that was his favorite method. So his first scams involved him making it look like he had killed himself in 2 separate house fires. But what investigators didn't find was his body in none of these house fires, because by then, once Dr. Broomfield got his insurance payout, he would take the money and run. the county investigators decided to, look at the car accident. As they were looking at the supposed body of Dr. Broomfield, there were some identifying features which seemed to match Dennis Russell, who had recently disappeared. And when they talked to the community about Russell, some said Russell didn't amount to much. He was a bachelor and lived alone in a shack. He tended to a few sheep, and as far as anybody knew, he had no kin. He was shiftless, sullen, and sickly. Society would not have missed him if he died, is what one witness said in 1920. It took one full week for authorities to complete the examination of the body and question witnesses to declare that the body was that of Dennis Russell and not of Dr. Broomfield. Among the methods used to distinguish between the two was the fact that the corpse was not wearing underwear when discovered. That was the big red flag right there. Dr. Broomfield always wore underwear, whereas Russell chose not to. I guess going commando was better than nothing. Anyways, Broomfield was tracked down to Canada a month later and hauled back to Oregon for trial. It was there that his criminal history was brought out. Not only did they charge the dentist with murder, but his scheme to collect on his own life insurance was declared the most sensational crime in Pacific Coast history at the time. But even though his story came out and it fell apart, the dentist would not confess. And he used the old, well, I don't remember what happened. I could have killed him. Who knows? I think. Are you sure it wasn't? Was it someone else that was trying to frame me? The whole spiel of, trying to get police off his back. But that didn't work at all, because there was enough evidence to have him tried, convicted, and sentenced to hang. And even though he was sentenced to hang, they let him stew in a jail cell for a bit, where he tried to appeal his conviction. But once his numbers of appeals ran out, he decided that the only course of action was to commit suicide, which he did. On September 13th, 1922, authorities found his body in his jail cell with his wrists cut from a dental plate. But they said what the suicide may have seemed like an overkill to himself, basically, because not only did he slit his wrists, but as his wrists were bleeding, he tied his bed sheet around his neck and choked himself. So this is where it got confusing. So it's like, did he actually tie the bed sheet around his neck first and then slit his wrist, or did he because he wouldn't have been able to tie anything anyways with his wrists already being cut. But I could be wrong, because unless he severed the muscles in his wrists or tendons, something, he wouldn't have been able to move his hands anyways. But they found him hanging from his bunk. And that is all that has been said so far about that. They said that there could be more crimes that he had committed, but since this is so long ago, they wouldn't know. I mean, they're assuming that in the other scams that he's pulled, he could have used a different alias for each crime. They said that from From what they can tell, he did commit this multiple times, but it's hard to say the exact number. And that's about it. If